Hey guys, Brian here, and this is my Microsoft E3 2015 press conference reactions. And boy, did they have a really good showing. They made sure that they were for gamers, they had plenty of games, and they started off by showing off Halo 5 Guardians, which to me was probably the weakest of the offerings that they had throughout the press conference. Here's why I say that. Halo, it just looks like more Halo. That's not a bad thing, but they didn't really go for making it look different. There is a few differences in this particular Halo. It seems that you have squad-based combat. You can tell your squad members to go do stuff and to target enemies. That's all interesting. It just looked like more Halo to me. One big announcement they did say was their Warzone multiplayer component, which is 24 players, 12 on 12 players, and that's, I'm sure, very interesting for the Halo players out there. And it just, in my opinion, it wasn't the biggest thing that they showed off. But then they followed that up with a new game by Keiji Inafune, and it's going to be an exclusive. It's called ReCore, and the little CG trailer that they showed off for it looks amazing. There's this chick and like a robot dog, and they're going through this kind of post-apocalyptic desert type area, and they get overrun by these other robots, and the robot dog explodes but leaves its blue core that it had like in its stomach behind. And the chick picks that up and finds a bigger robot and puts it in it, and then your companion is now this big robot. So it shows that there might be some sort of AI swapping of sorts, and it looks really cool from what I've seen. It's basically a CG trailer, and that's it right now, but it looks like it has some promise, and Keiji Inafune is a very good game designer, and I'm sure whenever it does come out, it will be an interesting game to keep your eye on. And then they followed up by some really big news, which was backwards compatibility for the Xbox One. Yes, you can play your Xbox 360 games on Xbox One. No, it's not all of them all at once, but it will be that. It's sort of similar to what they did with Xbox and Xbox 360 in a way, but just better, it seems like. And I'm sure 360 owners looking to upgrade are happy about that, and ones that already have upgraded and didn't want to get rid of all their old 360 games are also very happy. From what I heard, it's both digital and physical backwards compatibility, which is very awesome, and I'm sure plenty of Xbox owners are happy to see that. Then they showed off their new Elite controller, which looks really cool. They got swappable components, paddles in the back, very interesting, cool controller. I don't, that's about it. It's just a new controller. It looked cool. Then Bethesda came out and they showed off more Fallout 4, and it was more gameplay than their actual showing at the press conference, to be honest. And they showed off more gunplay, more VATS, and they also showed you in the power suit, and it was really interesting stuff. They had cool little weapons like the laser musket, which you shot and then had to crank and then shoot again, but it would like decimate enemies. And then there was a really huge battle at the end where it was you in a power suit versus a giant monster, and it looked really awesome. You ended up taking down the monster, and something else overcame you, from what I remember. Then EA came out and they talked about EA Access and how Titanfall will be on EA Access soon, as well as Dragon Age Inquisition. And then they showed off Plants vs. Zombies 2, Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2, which looks like more goofy first-person fun. Then a really cool thing happened. The Forza Motorsport director and Henry Ford III dropped down an actual Ford GT, and it was right there in front of everybody. And they talked about how it is coming exclusively to Forza 6, and they showed off the game, and they showed off the GT in the game, and this game just looks beautiful. Gran Turismo definitely has some competition this year, or whenever they decide to show off Gran Turismo. But they have their work cut out for them, because Forza Motorsport 6 looks like the definitive driving game. It looks really awesome. The tracks, the cars, you can definitely tell they put a lot of attention to detail in Forza Motorsport 6. From Software, they had a small showing of Dark Souls 3. It looked incredible. There was a giant with a crown. There wasn't too much that they showed, and they announced that it's coming out early 2016. That was very interesting. They showed off more of The Division, exclusive beta this December. Then they showed off more Rainbow Six Siege, which I'm sure both of those titles just talked about will be shown off more in the Ubisoft conference, because they didn't show too much of those. Then they went on into an indie montage, and they showed off several games afterwards. One was Tacoma. It looked like an abandoned spaceship of sorts. They had a game called Beyond Eyes, which was like an exploration game with a blind girl, but a little bit different from that game I was telling you about several episodes ago called Perception, and the way that it seems like the more you move and hear stuff, the more the environment around you can see. Still very interesting game. Ashen looks like some sort of explorative platform adventure game that they showed a few seconds of. And then the most interesting one to me was called Cuphead, and it's this platforming game that the graphics look like 1930s cartoons, hand-drawn cartoons, and the director even said that he wanted it to look like those cartoons, but play like old-school 8-bit platforming games, and it looks awesome. It looks very much like those cartoons back in the day, and I can't wait to actually play this game. It looks really, really well done. You can tell they put a lot of time into the drawing in it. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff. They announced Xbox Game Preview, which is very similar to Steam Greenlight. You can join today if you're an Xbox Gold member. Then Dean Rocket Hall of DayZ fame came out and showed off this space game called Ion. There wasn't much that they showed, but what they did show was fairly interesting. And from there, it was very pretty looking, obviously. And then they showed off Tomb Raider, more of Rise of the Tomb Raider. And this was actually a very well done showing that they showed. It was gameplay mostly, and they were in this snowy area that they were going through. Laura had a friend with her. I will say one thing. Lara Croft looks a lot different in this game than she did in the original reboot. I don't know if that's just the technology, probably so. You know, Drake doesn't even look like Drake in Uncharted 4, so it probably just has to do with the technology. but they were in this snowy level climbing, similar to the climbing that she did in the previous Tomb Raider game, and it looked really beautiful. They showed off at the end they showed off her walking into a tomb, and it just looked like more Tomb Raider, from 2 years ago, but more beautiful looking, more open from what I see, and I'm sure it's going to be an amazing game. Still confused on whether this will ever come to any other platforms, as they refuse to really clear that up, but interesting game nonetheless. Then the Rare came out and they showed off 30 games for $30 collection. It was the Rare Replay is what they're calling it. And then they showed off a new game, which was kind of like a cartoony looking pirate game that had like ship battles and exploration. It looks really fun, and it looks like one of Rare's passion projects. They seem to maybe be taking back some of their glory and making another great game. It's been a while since we've seen them make something that they have really been happy with, and it's awesome to see that. Then they showed off Fable Legends and announced that it's going to be free to play for Xbox One and Microsoft 10 or Windows 10 players. And then they showed the interesting HoloLens, and they showed this off by showing a Minecraft Let's Play of it, and they used this special camera so we could see what the guy with the HoloLens was seeing. And it started off with just him playing the game with the HoloLens on, and it was on his wall. There was no TV there, it was just projected on his wall, and he was sitting there playing. And then he was like, oh, but let's make it more interesting. And he dragged it to the nearest table, and then kind of had an overview view of it. And he had somebody else playing with him, and he could follow what they were doing, see, oversee different environments that she could go to, saw this underground base she could go under, and pointed her in the right direction. It looks really cool, and I'm interested in seeing what they can do with other games with HoloLens. I'm sure they will show more off in Gamescom and stuff like that. And yeah, it was just cool to see like the whole Minecraft world on a table. It was really interesting. Then the Coalition came out, formerly Black Tusk Studios. They're the new makers of the Gears of War franchise, and they finally spilled the beans on Gears of War Ultimate Edition. It's a completely remade from the ground up Gears of War remaster, and they announced that, and they were fixing to walk off the stage, and then they were like, oh, well, yeah, we also got to show off Gears 4. And they showed 2 new characters that are hunters of some sort, they kind of implied. And they were going through this town, and there was a very strong, almost sci-fi storm going on as they're walking through some of these buildings, and they're getting collapsed by the wind and lightning. And they look to be tracking one of the weird beasts of Gears, maybe to eat. I'm not sure. They did say at one point that the hunters have become the hunted, was what your companion pretty much in verbatim said. And it looks pretty interesting. Looks more Gears of War, but it definitely seems to have a different feel than the other games, even though there's a lot of similar elements to the past Gears games. It seems like there's going to be a different feel to it, because to me it looked like they aren't just going, go to one place, shoot a bajillion things, go to the next place, do the same thing. there seems to be sort of like maybe some stealth elements to it. I'm not sure if that's going to be true or not, but it seems like maybe the action was toned down. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it seems really interesting, and I'm sure everybody who saw it probably shit their pants, because it does look like a very interesting game and very different game than the past years. Then they said Holiday 2016 on that, and that pretty much closed out Microsoft's press conference. And I do gotta say, I'm impressed, and I'm interested in seeing what Sony does with their press conference, because, like I said, Microsoft had a very strong showing, and they showed off several new titles and gave us a glimpse at some titles that we barely knew about before. And I'd probably give them a solid B plus for their press conference. It was a really well done conference. They definitely focused more on games, and even when they showed off a piece of hardware like the HoloLens, they didn't make it uninteresting for everybody to watch. That special camera that let us see the holograms helped very much into keeping it interesting, and I think Minecraft was probably the best way to show off it, even though I'm sure there will be a lot more graphically amazing games that are going to be shown off with HoloLens. But they did a really good showing. I'm actually really excited to see more of Recore, KJ Infune's new game that is an Xbox exclusive. It has me possibly interested in maybe in the future buying an Xbox One, because they did have a really good showing, and 30 games for $30, rare replay. I mean, they showed off Banjo-Kazooie, Perfect Dark, Battletoads, Conquer. Don't get me, I may be wrong on this, but it seemed like all of their games. I'm probably wrong on that. It probably isn't all of their games, but it's probably a very good amount of their games. And it's for $30, and that's a really good bang for your buck. And other than that, Tomb Raider looked awesome. Really, I can't strain enough that the snow mechanics in that game were amazing. It reminded me of watching Uncharted 2 and seeing the beginning level, and at the time, the snow mechanics on that looked really good. Or Metal Gear Solid 4, when you go back to Shadow Moses, I was floored by how the snow looked in that game. And it seems to be, something that shows off the beauty of graphics when snow falls. I don't know, maybe that's just me. But like I said, they had a really good showing, and I will be back in just probably around an hour. Well, the next conference is an hour, probably more like 2 hours, to give you EA's press conference reactions. I'm interested in seeing what they do. I'm sure we'll see Star Wars and many other things, but that's my time for this video. If you liked it, please like it, subscribe to the show, follow me on Twitter. I'm @BrianPoteet, and I'll see you in just a little while to give you my thoughts on EA's press conference.